Hello everybody. Now that I've culled all of these images, I'm ready to import them and start editing. So normally when I import, they're already on my hard drive, so I'm not importing directly into Lightroom. So I just find the folder that they're in. And because I've put them into a separate folder, I'm importing all of them. I always build smart previews. These ones are in their own catalog. That is a new part of my workflow where I'm creating a new catalog for every client. If this were a client that had like an engagement session and a wedding, I would add a different collection for each one of those sessions just to keep myself a little bit more organized. Down here, one of the things I have a metadata preset that has all of like my copyright information and everything like that. Normally as part of my workflow, I do add one of my general presets that I've created. I have all of these ones that I've bought, but like I never use them. I once upon a time was like, oh, maybe I'll try these presets, but I just don't like them. So I have my own that I've created that are up here. Normally I add one of these, usually it's this one. But I'm going to actually play around with them after I've imported them just so you can see, and I can talk to you about like what it is that I'm changing with these presets, and so you can see what the difference is, like what they do to the images. But normally I add them at import just so it's one less step that I'm doing once I get into the develop module. So without further ado, we're going to import. And the reason that you want to build smart previews is because if something ever happens to the files on your hard drive and like they're lost or something, then with smart previews, you can still work on your files and be able to export a small, a small size JPEG. So you could still deliver something to the client, even though you wouldn't be able to print like a huge image from the small size JPEG. So I don't know if I'm like super skipping out. I see like in my little bubble that I look like I'm skipping. So while it's importing. Smart previews are done. Cool. Just bringing in the rest of them. All right, cool. So now they're all in here, and it's 44 photos all together in this gallery. So you can see we have all of the plant images, like his plant branding. We have his headshots, and then we have like some of the personal stuff that we did that he wanted, and as well as like some of actually our personal stuff because we are friends. And this was a session that we did right before he moved across the country. So I'm just going to go ahead and select all of them. And I'm going to go into the develop module. And one of the things that I always do is I immediately crop all of my images to an 11:15 aspect ratio. And that's because if like any of these, he does want to have like any of these printed somewhere, that's going to be the aspect ratio that is like the best to like be cropped for like all of the other kind of standard sizes, like a 4:6 or a 5:7 or an 8:10 or 16:20, like all of those kind of standard sizes. When you work with an 11:15, that's going to help. That's going to be the thing that like works the best to like help fit, because if you're taking the original 2:3 format that your digital sensor has, and then you're going to go to an 8:10, you're going to lose a lot off of the ends of your digital format. So bringing it to an 11:15 is kind of the best like proportion to help kind of work with all of those other sizes that clients are going to want to print to fit it in a frame that they can buy at the store. So now I've cropped, so it goes like that crop is now applied to all the rest of the images. And then another thing that I do is I come down to the sharpening, And I just do kind of a quick little sharpen and noise, or like just a minor noise reduction on all the images as well, just to kind of like tighten it up a little bit. You know, nothing too crazy, just a little something something. So now over here in my presets, which is like hidden behind my little timer over here. Oh, there we go. Like I have these ones that I've kind of worked with over the years that all do kind of the same thing. But like this one you can see makes it like really contrasty and the images are not that great. This one kind of keeps a good amount of shadows, which I like. This one kind of really softens everything. So I do like the moodiness still. But I do like that this kind of like pre-brightens everything up. So, and it still keeps the shadows a bit dark. So I think I'm actually going to stick, this is the one I normally use. I created it for one of my regular second shooters who shoots with Canon. But I've actually just kind of liked it more for all of my images anyway. So I'm just going to go ahead and do it. Bam, on all of them. So one of the things that my preset does is it kind of brings up the shadows a lot. So it really brightens up images all over. But it knocks down the highlights a little bit so the image doesn't get like too out of control. But I might bring down the highlights even more on specific images. I'm not going to do it to all the images right now. And then it also, I bring down the blacks a little bit just to kind of keep some richness in the shadow so it doesn't get like too washed out. And then I also just like bump all of these up a little bit too, again, so it doesn't have like too washed out of a look by bringing up the shadows as high as I do. And then the other thing it does, I mess with the tone curve just a little bit, particularly in bringing the darkest blacks up and then bringing the shadows back down a little bit more in line. And what I like about that is that when I transform it to a black and white, it really keeps like a velvety look to it, which I really like for my black and whites. And that's really the only thing that my presets do, is it just kind of brightens and flattens a little bit while still maintaining some depth and moodiness. So without further ado, I am going to just click off and start right in. So one thing I'm noticing is that on import, these are a little bit more yellow than I really like. So even though I had set, I don't know, I haven't quite figured this out. This is one thing that despite all of my reading and all of like my attempts at trying to mess with this, I had my white balance at 6500 when I shot, and my tint was not plus 11. If somebody knows the answer to this, please help me, because I have tried to read up on this and figure it out, and I don't know what it is. But my white balance and my tint always comes in warmer and more magenta than I set it in camera. So I am immediately going to try to like cool this down a little bit. So even though like my magenta is up, this actually does, like, it reads more green than the magenta is showing up here. So like, I'm not going to bring it down anymore. I'm actually just going to keep it where it is. And before I even try to cool it down any more than 6500 or even maybe bring the magenta up, I'm going to go ahead and knock my highlights down, because that window is like blam. It's like so incredibly blam. And I'm actually going to bring the whites down a little bit too, just to see. No, I'm going to undo that. So actually, there we go. So yeah, I went back to highlights and undid the whites. And I think that's fine. So actually, I'm just going to bring this down to like, now that I've knocked the highlights back a little bit, it does read a little bit yellow to me. So I'm just going to see, or kind of pinky yellow. So I'm just going to bring this down to an 8. And then I'm actually going to bring this down to 6250. Like that's another temperature that I really tend to like. It's looking a little bit better. Definitely like the greens are doing okay. So I'm now going to come down to the HSL panel and start messing with some sliders. So certainly the yellows are looking really green. So I'm going to move the hue slider and see if I can bring the yellows a little bit more orange. And maybe bring the oranges just a little bit red. And this is kind of where the art really comes in, because you don't want to go too far. And sometimes it's not until you've gone like way too far that you're like, oh shit, I really like went kind of crazy. And then another thing I like to do when I really start making something kind of orange, sometimes you can like really push the slider past where it should be, and then that's when I like to like go to the luminance and like bring the luminance out a little bit, because it like desaturate it doesn't desaturate it, that's what the saturation is for, but it gives like that, you know, as you can see, it gives that desaturation effect because it like blows out the highlights of it when you push the luminance up. So like I'm kind of digging where that's going. And then I'm just going to bring the saturation of the green down just a little bit, because even though like these are plants, the green is just like a little too intense. You know, we want it to be like a little bit moodier. So I'm even going to bring the luminance of them down just so that they still have some drama to them, so they don't feel desaturated, you know. They looked so electric. All right, cool. I'm digging where this is going. This looks like Christopher and his aesthetic, certainly. All right, so now I'm going to come back to the crop. I'm going to straighten this out because he looks like he's in the middle of an earthquake. And so because that line of the window is so like prominent in the image, I'm going to make that straight first and then see how I feel about it. Like obviously now this window line is pretty crooked, but I think I don't know if I can't make them both straight, obviously. Maybe I can find something like kind of in the middle. That doesn't seem so bad. And definitely I like want to include more of the plants because like that's a focus here. All right. I think I'm going to bring the temperature down even more, because even though I did do the thing with the oranges, it's still just not quite right. All right, that I think is good. I'm digging on it. I'm going to bring my shadows back down just a little bit, bring some of that drama back. All right, I like it. So now, since I haven't done anything with brushes, I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And yeah, like everything that's here, I can keep all of this copy. So I'm just going to straight copy it. I'm going to paste it onto the next image. And you can see like it made pretty much all the same effects. The only thing I'm going to do here is I'm just going to bring up the exposure of the image, you know, just so that his face is a little bit more. And then what I'm actually going to do is brush an exposure brush over, it needs to be a little bit bigger, over this area so that it's not as blown out. But I don't mind that, like, he's, you know, he's still kind of in shadow there. And I'm going to bring this up so that like more of his head, actually, because his head is like right there, I'm going to just bring that down. There we go. Oh, I don't know, that is kind of weird. It's like, I have like a vignette happening. What is happening? Is there a vignette that I have on? All right. So I don't see a vignette anywhere. So I'm actually just going to take an adjustment brush and do exposure the other way so that you can see that he has a back of a head there. And it's not just like his head going off into nothingness. So like for the rest of these images, I'm going to go and do the same thing. I'm just going to, for all the rest of these plant images, I'm just going to paste my settings. And you can see them down at the bottom. They're all like changing at their own time in their own way. So it just like takes a minute. So come over here. So like when I go into reference view, this is the first one that I did. And like these two look very consistent to each other. This one looks a little dark. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up a little. This one also looks a little dark. I'm going to bring it up. This one looks really light. I'm going to bring it down a little. It also looks a little cold, so I'm going to warm it up just a titch. This one looks a little dark. I'm going to bring it up. Same with this. Looks a little dark. Just going to bring it up a little. Love that picture of his plants. So this one, again, looks a little dark. It is a backlit one. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one here for the reference. And those look like they're pretty spot on to each other. This one also looks maybe just a titch too dark, but looks good. This one's a bit dark. Again, just his hands. I love that. Oh, I'm going to bring this one back for reference and bring it up a little. Ooh, that was too much. Too much. There we go. This one looks like it didn't change with the paste. There we go. Sometimes you have to like go back and forth. Perfect. So like now the other thing that I'll do is I'm going to come out of reference view. No, not what I want. Just kidding. There we go. Coming out of reference view. And so I'm just going to like go through and adjust the crops on these as well. So again, because this is like about him and his plants, I really want as much of the plants in there as possible as would make sense for the composition. I made that line straight. I feel like that made him look crooked. Sometimes you don't always go with like the straight line. Like this one is definitely not going to be like whatever the straight line is. There's no way that makes sense. I love these ones where he was talking to his plants. They're some of my favorites. I love this one of his plants. He is such a great like creator. All right, so this one, like I was not standing as well as I could have been to capture this photo, so like the lines are all out of whack. Obviously, I need to come down here and I'm just gonna like auto it and see what that does. And then like, so like that made the window right, but I don't like it kind of messed with the table settings, so I still need to mess with like the horizontal. I don't remember which way it goes. There we go. Does that look right? And like, I'm just going to eliminate as many of the lines as possible because this is like a super challenging perspective situation. And like, it's still a gorgeous photo of like his plant setup. And actually now that I'm here, I want to do some more edits on this. Like I want to bring it up a little. I want to bring the blacks down just to give it some more punch. And maybe the shadows down a little. And because this is not like a person, it's not their face, I'm actually going to bring the luminance way up because you can see it, like how grainy it is. So I'm going to do like 25 and that's fine. Yeah, like that's, I could probably even do like even more because like I said, it's just plants. It's not a person's face, but I think that's fine because you want it to still look cohesive with the rest of the thing. So this one I want to come as like far over as I can. And I think with this one, because it's so backlit, I'm going to do a dehaze because I want to make sure I try to get like some of the mist that he was spraying. If I can. Yeah, I don't think I can. And then I also don't like whatever this thing is in the back here. This has got to go. This actually doesn't look that bad. I might just tilt it a little. Perfect. Ooh, the chromatic aberration on this one is not that great. Come down, mess with that a little bit. So do that. We'll do that. There we go. No, still not right. What the heck is happening here? It's like the aberration is like all the way at the end of both of these spectrums. Oh well. So maybe it could still come up a little bit. It just feels a little too dark. What's this up here? Is that like a fixture? I guess it's fine. I'm not going to get rid of it. I love his faces. He's so funny. And again, this one I want to bring over as much as I can. I didn't compose this one very well. It happens. All right, so that's like, you know, let's see, how many photos is this? 16. So that's, you know, about a third of the gallery right there. You know, and that's 30 minutes ish, not quite, a little more than 30 minutes, a little less than 30 minutes, I mean. You know, and so even with a preset and, you know, batch editing, quote unquote, there's still a lot of tweaks that I went through to make sure it's consistent. So then the other thing that I do is I come back and I make sure that like they all look good. Nobody's like standing out as not looking like it belongs. So like this one is kind of looking a little not right. I don't think he would notice it as not looking like it doesn't belong, but I see it. So like now I'm really scrutinizing it. Like, what is it about this one that makes it look like it doesn't belong? And what could I change about it? So I'm just here while I'm looking at it compared to the other ones. I'm like, all right, it looks like it's a lot greener. So I'm just going to like do a half step of the magenta. Or maybe I'll do like a whole step. And that already makes it look like it's more in line with the others. And then we're going to do like a half. Well, no, it's already pretty pushed up and grainy. So I'm not going to bring it up anymore in terms of exposure. But what I might do is go back to the develop and I'll bring the shadows up just a little bit more. And bring the exposure down. That way the shadows are lighter, but like the overall image isn't, you know, like his face won't get like too crazy overexposed, but like these areas that feel super dark won't be a problem. So then I'll go back to the library and like, yeah, that looks like it's more in line now with the rest of the images. So like that was being super nitpicky, I think. Like if it was like part of a reception gallery for a wedding, I probably wouldn't have done anything. But because this is like a portrait gallery and like these might get used on like an Instagram feed for his business or maybe something to that effect, like I would want them all to be as consistent as possible. So I'm going to do these at another time. I'm not going to include these in the video, but obviously like these ones I'm not as concerned about, like making sure that like, you know, this is practically like a different session, you know, and same thing with like these personal ones. Obviously I would apply the same sort of consistency to these, but I'm not necessarily going to make them try to look like this because like they're a completely, you know, it's like a completely different set. You know what I mean? But I am going to try to give them a similar kind of moody look and things like that. So anyway, that's how I edit my sessions. That's like my workflow in terms of how I approach them and think about them, and how I make sure that like I'm delivering a consistent gallery. So there you are. Bye.